Okay, oscilloscopes for appliance operators by an appliance operator. You know, this is not going to be a complex technical presentation. It's kind of a casual flyby, in my opinion. Oh, now you double E's out there, you guys can go ahead and hit the road now. You won't find anything interesting here. Just move along, okay? Just kidding. Bench oscilloscopes. We're not going to look at those. They're valuable tools for builders and professionals. We are going to look at commonly found scope displays in HF rigs in 2021. You know, entry-level rigs have scopes. SDR platforms have all kinds of visual displays now. And Yaesu has been innovative in their introduction to the 3D scope. I've heard some pushback about it on the air, but I think it's pretty innovative, and I'd like to explore it myself. We're going to look at what I call the audio trio. This group of three, the oscilloscope, AF waveform, and waterfall. These scopes visualize sound for the amateur radio operator.
Thank you for your contact, Mike. We're operating Special Event Station Whiskey 8 X-Ray Kilowatt, commemorating the 100th anniversary of KDKA Radio. Information on QRZ.com, over.
Copy. I got a wonderful contact on you. I got you at least,
You could be sitting next to me, over.
Same here on this end. You're doing a wonderful job.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the contact and the time. 73s.
Oh, thank you very much. 73s, enjoy the rest of the day.
Kilowatt Bravo 3. This is
X-Ray Tango.
So the definition of an oscilloscope is a sophisticated diagnostic instrument that draws a graph of an electrical signal. Now, there are many electronic processes that the scope measures, but for ham radio, it's a more narrow range. Now, these are some of the many scope images available in ham radio. These are from the TS990. They have different displays. They vary in type and function, and they give the operator tons more information about the exchange than they'd have without them. These are not pure oscilloscope images. They go by different names: spectrograph, spectrum bandscope, but the only one that's a true oscilloscope image here in the yellow border looks like this. That said, these are all derivatives of the oscilloscope imaging process, and at the end of the day, they do the same thing. They graph an electrical signal. They give visual properties to an electrical signal. Now let's look over here at the oscilloscope. We want to break it out and get our arms around it here. The oscilloscope measures the magnitude of an electrical signal versus time. Now, I know in ham radio we'd more properly use the term amplitude. Now, time travels right to left on the oscilloscope, and each one of these divisions is worth 100 milliseconds times 5, means that at any given point, you are looking at 1/2 second on the scope. Now, at the most basic level, an oscilloscope graph shows how a signal changes over time. Thank you, Tektronix. Now, when you look at the waveform, it tells you a lot about the signal. And anytime you see a change in the height on the high side or the low, you know the voltage has changed. Now, the flat lines signify there is no signal at that point. There's some fuzz on there, but that's just noise. Now, here's one that's kind of puzzling. I think we're going to have to bring one of those double E's in here to help explain this, because I don't totally get it. But watch this. This waveform rises to a level of 2 divisions, but drops down here to 3 on the low side. Likewise, at the image below, it rises to a 2, but only to 1.5. Now, these slides illustrate that these waveforms are asymmetric. I'm not totally sure. I looked at the Tektronix manual, but I swear I'm still cloudy. I don't understand it. One of you double E's come back in here and help us understand this. All right. High frequency signals are a higher voice will appear more compressed, a more tightly packed waveform on the oscilloscope, whereas a lower frequency voice, a deeper voice, is going to be looser. It's going to be more expanded.
I have a Kilo November station. Could you come back with the full call sign, please? Roger. Kilo 7, Kilo November Mike. Kilo 7, Kilo November Mike. You are 5-9 in Virginia. 5-9 in Virginia. Name here is Curtis. Back to you. Hi, Curtis. You are 5-9 into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The name here is Brian, Bravo, Romeo, India, Alpha, November, and we are running the special event station Whiskey 8 X-ray kilowatt. Over.
Now, to me, the oscilloscope is subtle. It tells you a lot, but it doesn't blare it. You have to read it. You have to look for the visual nuance of the changes in the signal. Let's move on to the audio frequency waveform. The AF waveform is typically found with the waterfall, as they both tell us different yet complementary information. And these are both graphs of the demodulated audio signal. The AF waveform alone, we see a left to right, the frequency out to 3K, typical single side band bandwidth for hams, and the vertical plane measures the signal strength. This signal started out fairly strong and rolled off at about 1K, came on down, ran along flat, and then some boost on the end out there at about 2500K. That's about all we can say about that at the moment. All right, as we look at it broken out from the integrated group, the AF signal on the left, on the right, the S meter, in this case was an S8 reading, but I recorded this frequency, S7 to S9, when I initially recorded this. Now, over on the left side, each one of these divisions is worth 20 dB. So as we can see, according to the AF waveform, we've recovered 20 dB, there's 40 dB, and indeed the peaks have extended well into the third level. So if we are going to measure this, we look to the power to S meter level conversion chart, and we see the 40 dB puts us up there at S7-ish, and if we add the peaks, we are back at the original S7 to S9, which I initially observed the station at, and that is consistent with the measurement of the AF waveform S7 to 9. So when it's all said and done, the scope, the S meter, and the math are all in general agreement. Now, the waterfall display is, I don't know, it's maybe the most poetic. It tells you a lot of cool stuff, and it's a lot of fun to look at. But it would be generally described as a spectrum analyzer generated image that displays changes in frequency and its intensity over time. Now you say, well, how do we measure the intensity? Well, that's done through the waterfall, the color of the signal generated by the waterfall. In the Kenwood world, white is the strongest, medium from red to yellow, and weak from green to blue. As we look at the signal here on the left side, we can see out to a little better than 1K. We see some fairly thick red there. Diminishes a little as we move on out. By the time we get out here to 2K, there's the red is thinner. There's much less of it. And if we move further out 2500 plus, you can see that the signal is definitely rolling off with the green and blue speckles.
I have a Kilo November station. Could you come back with the full call sign, please? Roger. Kilo 7, Kilo November Mike. Kilo 7, Kilo November Mike. You are 5-9 in Virginia. 5-9 in Virginia. Name here is Curtis. Back to you. Hi, Curtis. You are 5-9 into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The name here is Brian, Bravo, Romeo, India, Alpha, November, and we are running the special event station Whiskey 8 X-ray kilowatt, over.
You know, the audio waveform also identifies what some audio engineers call the AF signature of the station at a given point, at this given point. Now, it could change in just a few minutes with a change of a filter, bandwidth, etc. But it is the audio characteristics of this signal. Now, as we look at it, we see that this signal has nothing going on down here on the low end. So he's got a low cut of about 50 hertz. But out here, we've got audible emission all the way out to 3K. So I'm putting this guy at about 2.9 kilohertz of bandwidth. Now, the last station that talked to K7K&M presumably was W8XK, but this is kind of a sloppy profile up here, and it's very different than this nice, neat, boxed-in audio signature down below. But let's look at his roll-off, or a cut, rather. I think it's about 120 hertz out there. We don't have the scope resolution to be able to read down that far, so I'm guesstimating there. Out here, though, I think this is a good 300K. I think if we look at 2.5 here, the black shows what's left of the emission there on that. And we look at 3, that boxed me is 300 versus, and the 200 add up to the 2.5. So I'm going to put old W8XK at about 2.6. I think I'm going to have to send him an email and ask him what he was running so I can get to the bottom of this mystery. All right, now W8XK or anybody else can be on the air and he can say, you know, I've got this audio AF signature, but I want to dazzle people with my sparkling highs. So I'm going to remove that high cut filter and dissolve. That's what it might look like, and he'd have a new audio signature. Now, the AF waveform says, well, whoa, I'm not going to be left out of this, so watch the birdie. And that's what it might look like. Okay. Anyway, we're going to listen to that clip one last time. There'll be no visual cues. I just want to watch the elements of the waterfall and see the AF waveform variance here. You can see the roll-off on the AF waveform and the absence of red below down on the waterfall, and then the mystique of the oscilloscope.
I have a Kilo November station. Could you come back with the full call sign, please? Roger. Kilo 7, Kilo November Mike. Kilo 7, Kilo November Mike. You are 5-9 in Virginia. 5-9 in Virginia. Name here is Curtis. Back to you. Hi, Curtis. You are 5-9 into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The name here is Brian, Bravo, Romeo, India, Alpha, November, and we are running the special event station Whiskey 8 X-ray kilowatt, over.
Now, another clip I found that's kind of interesting here was a special event recently. I want you to look at the steep slope and fast rise time on this guy, and you'll see it kaboom, kaboom, up and down below the signal below. He's there, he's fine. He just doesn't have the kind of punch that K2RYD does above. We've got the tighter waveform, a higher pitch voice, and a lower voice down here with the looser waveform.
Well, thank you, Jim. You're a 5-9 here in New York, and thank you very much for the contact and having interest in my special event, and you have a very Merry Christmas, 73. It's on the Whiskey 2 Romeo QRZ page, and it's also on the Kilo 2 Romeo Yankee Delta QRZ page, which is my page. Roger? Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. This is Whiskey 2 Romeo QRZ.
Victor Alpha 3, Uniform Delta.
Kilo Echo 3.
Victor Alpha 3, India, Juliet Kilo.
Kilo. Okay, I wasn't even close. Victor Alpha 3 India Julia Kilo, you're 5'9" in New York.
You're 5'9" in Southern Ontario. Thanks very much and Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. 73, this is Whiskey to Romeo.
Kilo
Victor 4 Uniform Delta.
November Delta.
Whiskey Bravo. Okay, Whiskey 3 Romeo Whiskey Bravo, you're 5'9" in New York.
Okay, let's drill down in this a bit. Out here on the left side and the waterfall on the top, we see that there's clearly some roll off there, 50, 80 hertz. But when her first modulation is strong, just a dark red there in the center, it also is reflected. The fast rise and sharp signal strength up there in the AF waveform. And then as she moves, right after that, it drops way down on the waterfall. And it goes to a greenish blue, even some speckles of blue in there. So you've got that up, down, which is also reflected in the waveform look below. Now look at it horizontally. As you see it goes out, we start to flatten out after we move out there past 1.5K. Down here, we're flat the whole time, all the way through. Now, she speaks in a staccato tone, which I think contributes in part to this, whereas it's a more of a drawl or a more drawn-out enunciation of his words on the part of WA4D IJK. So, the audio trio, what we looked at, the oscilloscope, the waveform, and the waterfall. The oscilloscope, we saw how a signal changes over time. The AF waveform reflected in frequency and audio and signal strength, and the single frequency waterfall to me makes it a multi-dimensional experience operating. Scopes tell a story. They tell you stuff you wouldn't have known.
Live in town, nice settled neighborhood. But no, I wouldn't dream about putting a beam up or anything. I wouldn't want to disturb the aesthetics of the neighborhood. But I spent a couple of years researching antennas. I just put every wire antenna you can think of up and settled on the NSAIDs. But pretty much for what I do, that's sufficient for communicating anywhere. I don't chase DX or anything. I never had a work all anything in the almost 60 years I've been on the radio. Just like to talk to folks. That's it. Back to you, Paul. Okay, WA8 OPR W2JGQ. Well, at the previous antenna location on the west side of the island of Manhattan, when conditions were really good, in the 1980s, when sunspots were really high, I was able to work. Now, we have 50 states. In Japan, there's 47 prefectures. I worked all 47 and all 10 call areas of Japan. And that was a big one. To get the last prefecture in Japan, it was out where there were farmlands. And I had someone in Japan make a phone call to a farmer to dust off his equipment so I could get his prefecture. How cool is that?
Okay. You know what? There's a primer link down below in on the net by Tektronix. It's outstanding. It runs about 50 or 60 pages. Hey, for us appliance operators, the first dozen pages are fine. You'll get your feet wet, and it'll give you a better grasp of how these graphs of electrical signals work. Software I use for this, Snagit, Camtasia, Keynote, and a new app called and that's that. So this was Scopes for appliance operators. Thanks for hanging out if you lasted this long. And I have a ICOM 7300. You know what? I'm going to get rid of that radio and get one of the new Yaesus with just for the scope.